And commuters who use public transportation would get the same tax benefit as people who drive to work under new legislation proposed by a Republican lawmaker. Congresswoman Nan Hayworth says it's not fair to give people who use the bus or train less of a reward than those who jam up the highways. Joining us on America's Radio News is Congresswoman Nan Hayworth, a Republican who represents the 19th District of New York. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Rachel. I'm well. How are you?
Great. Thanks for joining us. So tell us how this Commuter Savings Act would work. How would someone get this tax break if they're, say, taking the bus instead of driving a car?
Sure, right. If they're taking the bus or the train, mass transit, what they would be able to do is take a tax credit on $240 per month of what they spend on their mass transit. And that is something that was part of the stimulus, and it expired in January 1st of this year. And in the new transportation bill that just passed the House and the Senate, in that new agreement, they reverted, they kept the current law, which allows commuters who drive and park to take a $240 credit. But for mass transit commuters, it goes down to $125 a month. So what this bill does is it restores that match so that folks who take mass transit can also take that tax credit equal to what drivers do and what they do when they get that parking allowance. And it balances the anticipated shortfall in tax collections, so to speak, by taking some funding from one of the discretionary or so-called slush funds in the Affordable Care Act. And it's a fund that, in fact, President Obama himself had said could be tapped for other purposes. So we're endeavoring to return dollars to the taxpayers' pockets. And so basically the benefit allows commuters to set aside kind of a specified amount of the paycheck per month from their deductible income on their taxes, right? Exactly.
But I didn't realize that if you didn't drive your car, you weren't going to get that. Do you think a lot of people just aren't familiar with this, or?
Well, it could well be. I mean, your employer should tell you about that tax credit, or your tax preparer should tell you about that tax credit if you don't read it in your instructions. And we all know, unfortunately, that our taxes are way too complicated as it is. And, of course, it would be great, and our ultimate goal is to have a much simpler tax code all the way around and give everybody a nice break on their taxes. But for our commuters who take mass transit, what we're trying to do is give them back that bit of a break that they received before January 1st, 2012, for a couple of years, and do it in a way that's responsible.
Well, Congresswoman, what's your motivation with this? Is it to help them out financially? Is it the environment motivating you?
Well, I think it's a combination of benefits when we do this kind of thing. Yes, we're giving hardworking mass transit commuters a break, and that's a nice thing. We're helping the environment because mass transit, and I took mass transit for a couple of years when I was commuting. I live about an hour north of New York City, and when I commuted back and forth, I took mass transit. You do help the environment with that, of course, and you also reduce wear and tear on our roads and bridges, on our highways. So there are lots of benefits to mass transit, and we'd like to help those commuters have that tax credit break as well.
And how are your fellow Republicans receiving this?
Well, we have two Republican co-sponsors already, primary co-sponsors on the bill, Representative Peter King from Long Island and Representative Bob Dole from suburban Illinois, suburban Chicago. And since we just introduced the bill on Friday afternoon, I'm anticipating we're going to get a lot of enthusiasm for it.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you joining us, Congresswoman.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Rachel, and we'll look forward to more.
Okay. Congresswoman Nan Hayworth, Republican, who represents the 19th District of New York.